Sometimes it's just fun to trigger lefties. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a, let's just say, interesting day. Of course, the day was not meant to be interesting. Of course, I'm recording this video on Thursday, and this video will be out on Friday. Now, guys, we're about to answer a couple of questions here, okay, about America and whether or not it's actually a Christian nation as a whole, or if it ever was a Christian nation in its actual inception. Of course, today was very interesting. You see, today, I didn't have anything planned except to do a couple of job applications, clean the house, and work out. Well, after I got through the job applications, I got done a little bit faster than I thought it was going to be. And of course, I just kind of like got, a little bit bored. So I'm looking through Twitter. And of course, I triggered this guy who, quite frankly, is an internet personality. Of course, you've probably heard of him. His name is Jesse Kelly. Don't worry, I'll be explaining that right there towards the end of the video because he did, in fact, actually get triggered. So I want people to know that it's not just the left that I decided to trigger. A lot of times, it's what I think are actually bought and paid for rhinos too, okay? Of course, you guys can follow me on Twitter and you guys can follow me on Facebook. As you guys can see the pages here. Don't worry, I'll leave links in the description box. So I got thinking about something, and I was like, you know what, man, there's just one person, this one individual whose meltdowns are legendary. By the way, to those out there who think I'm just going to be making fun of Jink Younger, that's not actually what I'm going to be doing in this video. As a matter of fact, I actually wish him well, and let me explain why. You see, his meltdowns are absolutely legendary. We need those meltdowns on election night. As a matter of fact, I kind of hope his big ass starts taking an aspirin so that way his blood will thin out, so that way he won't stroke out during his meltdowns. Obviously, as you guys saw in the tweet, a lot of people took offense to that. They really and truly did. But see, here's the thing about the modern left. You see, they don't bother to ask you a question like, what do you mean by that? You guys saw that and you thought to yourself, wow, that was kind of a generalized statement there, John. It was kind of a generalized statement there, Claymore. Do you think maybe you could expand on this? Well, I decided to do it for a reason. Like I said today, guys, I just wanted to trigger people. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I just wanted to trigger these people and to see what type of responses I would get. Because, Twitter is really only good for one thing. It's not real life. It's just great for shit posting. So why not post some crazy stuff or some overgeneralized stuff so that way you guys can get a lot of funny comments sent right back to you. As a matter of fact, when leftists get triggered, they can actually be quite funny. But then again, though, there are those moments where they can get dangerous. But don't worry, we'll be talking about that right there a little bit later on. So let's go ahead and ask the question, is America actually a Christian nation? Now, obviously, people like to bring up the First Amendment. Freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion. You see, James Madison, of course, he was the main forebearer of the Constitution itself. He wanted to separate church and state, and I'm glad that he did that. I mean, even though I'm a Christian myself, I'm saying that obviously we need a separation of church and state. Oh, by the way, I also recommended that people at 7:45 earlier this morning, I also recommended that people just view libs as just good old-fashioned nerds, and they just need a good old-fashioned swirly from time to time. I just figured I would throw that out there. But obviously there's this thing called separation of church and state. However, when the Constitution was written, the main religion, main way of life in America at that time was actually Christianity. Now, obviously, they wanted to create a country where basically anybody and everybody could worship how they wanted. So, like I said, separation of church and state. We don't want basically a state religion. We don't want a country to have only one religion itself. And we don't want religion being enforced into certain institutions. I understand that. I 100% get that. By the way, most people actually know this. However, at the time, the country, for the most part, had mostly Christians in it. So, let's go ahead and fast forward a little bit to today. So, over time, has America's makeup as far as overall Christianity itself changed? Obviously it has. Christianity has actually declined somewhat over time. And don't worry, we'll be talking about the in God we trust stuff here very shortly. Don't worry. Like I said, it's coming up. The thing is this right here. If you poll America itself and Americans, you find out that America, for the most part, actually adheres to Christianity itself or some way of life like Catholicism, Christianity. Of course, there are several denominations in Christianity. I personally consider myself to be a Methodist. It's primarily where I go to church at. There's Baptists, there's Episcopalians, etc., etc., etc. So is America really and truly a Christian nation? Well, like I said in the beginning, it was probably never really and truly meant to be a one religious state, but at the same time, though, Christianity, of course, is the predominant religion of the United States of America. It's the preferred religion of many. And even though religion itself and the way of life itself has kind of gone down a little bit, mostly due to people not going to church, people not actually picking up on their faith, people not taking their faith seriously, and of course the corruption of institutions and the crap that you watch every day. Don't worry, we've talked about OnlyFans and we've talked about porn and crap like that. the things that normally eat at people's souls, you might could argue that obviously Christianity is on the decline. But as I said before, though, most of America still adheres to Christianity. So I think that right there, for the most part, is the actual meat of the discussion, that America itself, for the most part, is in fact a Christian nation. But once again, though, those people on Twitter, the Twitterati's, those who follow Jink, those who watch Anna and all that crap, which, by the way, his viewership's actually kind of low. These people obviously did not bother to ask the question. They automatically assume, because this right here is what the hell they do. So let's go ahead and talk about the 1950s. Let's go ahead and talk about the whole "in God we trust" and "one nation under God" being used as a tactic against the Red Scare. Okay, maybe it was used against the Red Scare. Okay, cool, good to go. But let me ask you a question. What was the predominant religion? What was the predominant way of life of those in the 1950s here in the United States of America? Christianity, Catholicism. You know, like I said before, Methodists, Baptists, Episcopalians, Pentecostals, holiness. Yes, it was the predominant religion at that time here in America. So does that argument really and truly mean anything when people say, well, it was used as a scare tactic to scare people against communism? I don't see how that argument actually holds weight, especially considering the fact that more than 65% to two-thirds of the country was already Christian in their way of life. So I think that argument's a little bit moot. And if I did not say this before, which I'm pretty sure I did not, let's talk about the 50s as a whole. You see, in the 1950s, we didn't have a mass influx of Muslims. We didn't have a mass influx of those who adhered to Judaism. We just didn't at that time. The country was still predominantly white and still predominantly Christian. So therefore, at that time, America was definitely a Christian nation. And for the most part, most of America still adheres to some form of Christianity. Now, I know somebody in the comment section is going to come in here and say, well, wait a minute, Claymore, God can be, obviously, Jews, they have their own interpretation. Muslims, they have their own interpretation. Cool, good to go. But when "in God we trust" was actually created as a slogan, let me ask you a question. What was the predominant religion at that time? Obviously, Christianity. Who was that statement mostly geared towards? Christians, because at that time, it was mostly a Christian nation. The same way it was right around the time the Constitution was written, mostly a Christian nation. And guess what? Even though we've lost a lot of our values, for the most part, America is still very, very much a Christian nation. You see, guys, I had to bring these polls out here because, you see, liberals, they love to demand that you have some type of data or whatnot. Well, I just gave you guys some freaking data. Now, guys, with that right there being said, let's talk about rhinos for a very quick second. And speaking of "in God we trust," why the hell is this still on our dollar bills? You see, it says it right here, in God we trust. Also, something else, too. To you guys talking about pluribus unum, that phrase is Latin. Of course, that means "out of many come one." Yeah, that phrase is actually Masonic. Also, something else, too. That little eagle that they have, that's not really an eagle. That's actually a phoenix holding 13 arrows, and it's actually Masonic. I highly advise you guys do some research on that. And last I checked, Masonic is not exactly Christian. Oh yeah, that reminds me. One more little tidbit before I go further. One of the comments back to me was, "Go worship your Antichrist, Donald Trump," which I thought was kind of weird that they said that because liberals don't really read the Bible. You see, the same individual who commented back at me had gay pride flags in their actual in their bio, which I thought was kind of strange that they mentioned the Antichrist, because if these people had actually read the Bible, then they would know that the Antichrist is an individual or a man who, quite frankly, has no regard for women, heavily implying that that guy may be a homosexual, maybe gay. Last I checked, Donald Trump was in his mid to late 70s. He's got 5 kids, 3 different wives, several grandchildren. That doesn't exactly sound like someone who is gay, but then again, that maybe David Hogg is. Now, guys, while I was talking about Jink Younger, I brought up the fact that I triggered Jesse Kelly. Let me go ahead and kind of explain this. A lot of you guys may know who Jesse Kelly is. Okay, Jesse Kelly obviously works for this little YouTube channel called The First. Dana Lash is over there. Clay Travis is over there. Hell, Bill O'Reilly is over there. They don't get much viewership, and it kind of seems a little bit sad that they don't. And of course, what happened is that he was doing the normal dissemping as always. Of course, what he was doing was he was talking about Jared Kushner and talking about how Kushner was being soft when it comes to the issue of immigration. Now, guys, I don't really truly like Jared Kushner. I think Jared Kushner is one of the main reasons why Trump never got reelected, or why it was that libs actually came out in full force. I think the way they ran the reelection campaign was still garbage. Of course, we all know what really truly happened. They're not honk honk. Don't worry. I know some lefties will probably get triggered by that, but I really truly don't care. The thing is this right here. Jesse Kelly, as of late, has kind of been dissenting, okay? And don't worry, I've done one video comparing Ron and Don, but of course, we've seen a lot of things outside the Martha's Vineyard thing that's kind of like just more and more red flags are coming up. So I asked a question in the comment section. By the way, my Twitter has only got about 246 followers. Thank God for all 246, by the way. He responded by retweeting my question. So all I did was I asked him who he was working for recently, and I said that you're not always right, which, by the way, is his tagline. So he retweeted it, and he said, I am always right, talked about a show. And, of course, I responded, basically just being a troll, saying thank you for the exposure, which, by the way, was kind of weak. But then I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to hit his ass again. So I tweeted back at him and said, thanks once again. I appreciate that. I consider it a compliment, considering you only get about 1.4 thousand views per upload. And, of course, he blocked me. He also blocked a few other people who've been calling him out as of late, as you guys are seeing here. I advise you guys to go follow those Twitter accounts. And, of course, not only did he block me, he also deleted the entire Twitter thread itself. Yeah, man, what a weak, spineless person. And by the way, Jesse Kelly's he's a Marine like myself. I mean, I don't know, maybe he was supply admin, maybe he was like computers or some crap. I don't know. Obviously, his skin's kind of thin. But while we're on the topic of this, Matt Walsh was also sending out some tweets. And by the way, I don't really truly dislike Matt Walsh, but I definitely understand his past. You see, Matt has put up tweets like this right here. God, how I hate Trump supporters. He also put up a tweet basically going after evangelicals because we're not Catholics, or we how do I say it? We celebrated the split between Catholicism and Protestantism. Yeah, he's kind of brought stuff up like that there. And of course, he also voted for Evan McMullin. Matt Walsh can tell you that he's not establishment, but Evan McMullin, that guy was ex-CIA, and of course, he basically voted for the establishment, the intelligence agency. By the way, when he says, I want to ensure that Hillary nor Donald Trump get in office, that would be kind of difficult considering that you're voting for what would have been the fifth candidate out of 5 in the 2016 election. Of course, I'm talking about Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Gary Johnson, Jill Stein, of course, Evan McMullin, wherever the hell you want to call him. Yeah, I don't see how the hell that ensures neither Trump nor Hillary Clinton becoming president. That just sounds like a very, very feeble attempt at not just going ahead and coming out and saying it, that you still dislike the previous president. You dislike people who are evangelicals. You dislike the hell out of them all. Also, something else, too. 88 minutes into a documentary, you can't even mention the biblical definition of a woman. Give me a freaking break. Guys, John Clayton, where if you like the content, hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign up in the comment section. See you guys later.